Welcome to Wimmer's Wilderness. I'm your host, George Wimmer. I have 30 years of volunteer work, community organizing, and 16 years in local government, 12 of those as mayor. Wimmer's Wilderness is an informed look at politics, community, government, environment, and education from a local perspective. Today we're going to be interviewing Clayton Timm from Greenleaf Farms, and that interview will be coming up here shortly, but I just wanted to lay out a little bit of the background of aquaponics. The thing I love about aquaponics, well, I should really say the many things I love about aquaponics, but to give a little bit of that history and background about it, you can go all the way back to the Aztecs and in South China as well, where they really used aquaponics. They had these little island systems in the Aztec Empire, and I am not even going to try to pronounce the word, or, well, I guess maybe I can, but I'll spell it all for you. It's CHINAMPAS, and I just don't want to, denigrate the language by trying to pronounce that. But it was basically these little islands that they would have, fish there, plus the produce that they were, growing as well. And the fish, just like in modern aquaponics, provide the nutrients for the plants to grow. China did similar operations as well in their paddy fields, where they had fish swimming in there, and they were providing the nutrients for plants as well. So that's kind of the kernel of where aquaponics began. Now, if you flash forward to today and you look at aquaponics, and we're going to get the story from Greenleaf on some of the great things that they're doing there. But in a survey conducted back in 2010, 31% of respondents at that time thought they would be profitable within that first year. 55% said that they would be profitable in the next 12 months. So basically in year two. And then growers thought within 36 months, 75% of them thought they would be profitable. Because that's one of the big questions, and we do discuss that in our interview with Clayton as well. But I kind of wanted to give that context, because sometimes these, and I hate to say non-traditional forms of farming, but when you look at some of the organic farms, when you look at aquaponics, hydroponics, those types, they're, a smaller proportion of acres used in that type of farming. So, and I've used the word traditional farming, meaning, kind of going back to the way things were before we relied on heavy fertilizers and herbicides and pesticides and all that in farming. So sometimes the terminology gets moved around, changed around, that type of thing. But aquaponics is becoming more and more important to providing that good, healthy, organic food that we need, as well as providing it in a local setting. Most aquaponics, those small community operations, might be on a couple acres, sometimes as, small, the actual footprint of the building of that on half an acre to an acre. But I also kind of wanted to flip that around to one of the largest, if not the largest, and these things kind of fluctuate from time to time as the newest and biggest gets put onto the market. But there's an operation in northern Wisconsin that has a 123,000 square foot greenhouse at the center of their operations. They also have a 40,000 square foot fish rearing facility, and they raise salmon and rainbow trout. And those are used to provide the nutrients for all the greens that they grow. A lot of smaller operations use tilapia. This large operation is called Superior Fresh. They're located in northern Wisconsin. So you're going to hear today about Greenleaf Farms, which is a much smaller operation, but it's based in Chetek, Wisconsin. I was kind of surprised as I was researching this, and I've been a lover of aquaponics for a long time, but just how much of this is happening in northern areas of the United States. A lot of the traditional farming that had been occurring was down in the southern states, and a lot of that centered around the catfish industry. One of the highlights, and it's stated in the interview coming up, but I really wanted to stress it in our intro, is that virtually 100%, I think, in this large operation where they do a lot of metric following and recording, 99.9% of the water is recycled in the process. So you don't have any waste being flushed out. which, as if you've listened to episode 52 of Wimmer's Wilderness podcast, you hear about all the runoff that not only is polluting local streams and lakes and rivers, but is causing that big dead zone in the Gulf Coast. And if you haven't listened to episode 52, just go back one episode and you'll get all that great information there. So without further ado, let's head on into our interview. Today we're joined by Clayton and Timm of Green Leaf Farms in Chetek, Wisconsin. They're an aquaponics facility, and they've been producing here for a little bit. And we have Clayton with us today. So Clayton, could you just kind of introduce yourself to our audience and tell us what got you to this point and your background, what got you interested in aquaponics, why you chose Chetek, Wisconsin, and just kind of take us to your path to where you are today.
Yeah, well, it all started about 10 years ago or better now. That a couple friends were talking about doing something like this in the Eau Claire area, and I didn't really get involved, and that never really happened. And then back in about 2000, it must have been 18, kind of popped up on my Facebook and piqued my interest again, and another way to help the community also and make a viable business. And so I just looked into it a little bit more, and I actually went to a company, Nelson and Pate, who I purchased all my equipment from, all the tanks and pumps and all that stuff. They provided all that for me, and I actually went there and I took a class, a 3-day master's class with them to see if it was something that I really wanted to pursue, and basically came back and decided with the family that it was something that we wanted to do, and we just figured out financing, and we started building, and it was April of 2019. We put water in the tanks Labor Day of 2019, and then our first harvest of lettuce came off about the middle of November, and here we are just a little over a year later, and we're still at her.
So did you own
as far as Chetek?
Oh, yep, go ahead, sorry.
What's that?
No, go right ahead. I was just going to ask you if you own the land previously and your location selection and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, we didn't own the land. We bought 4 acres here on Highway M, just north of Chetek. Really, because we thought this was a good location for traffic, for higher visibility, with the lakes that were on here. And I guess we built in Chetek too because that's where we live. So.
It makes for a nice easy commute.
Yes, now I'm 5 minutes away from the office or the farm, if you want to call it, and yes, it makes it very nice for commuting.
How did you decide, on the setup? So, you talked with the one company that had provided you the equipment. Did you model it after something you had seen? Was there, did you have, a way when you were kind of laying this out to make it more scalable? Because obviously, most businesses like to plan their growth as they're kind of setting up. So kind of what went into that process?
Well, Nelson and Pate has been in business for over 30 years doing aquaponics, and they've been a research facility for UW Stevens Point. We did an aquaponics minor for many years. They offer through their classes and through a consultation business that they run. They pretty much have this all spec'd out according to how many plants you want to grow a year. They come up with the greenhouse design. Basically, when they ship it up here, it's all like in a kit ready to be put together.
Kind of a plug and play.
You know exactly what you're getting when you purchase it.
So when you were kind of when you're going through the process of deciding what you wanted to do, were you working on kind of your customer base? Had you reached out to differing businesses, and people want to check out your website? There's a lot of great information on there of who you are providing for that process. Cause my background is in business, and I did a lot of consulting for businesses, especially startup businesses, and really making sure that they understood what kind of market they were going into, as well as what was reasonable. Sometimes people shoot for the moon and kind of can't leave the atmosphere type thing, but yours seems to be a really, I don't want to say conservative approach, but it seems a very controlled, step-by-step, well thought out plan. So did you have those customers or where you thought that market would be in that area? Yeah.
We did do some, talking beforehand before we went through with this, and there isn't really anything like it in the direct area of Chetek. We're trying to keep our business all within 15 miles of the farm. We do all our own delivering. I do all our own sales calls, to establish that customer base that we have going now. Which leads to the next kind of question I think you have about the impact of COVID-19. We're a 90% restaurant business. Mm-hmm. That's who we cater to, and when COVID hit, it just about ceased production or harvest anyways.
Right.
We didn't stop producing because it's on about a 45-day cycle from seed to harvest. So when you wanted to be ready for when that order to stay home was canceled or nullified, or however you say it, I guess. Mm-hmm. We roughly have about 6,000 heads of lettuce from seed to harvest in the greenhouse at all times. So it kind of we had a lot of backup as far as harvesting, but we did donate. I'm guessing somewhere in that neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000 heads of lettuce to the food pantry during the COVID time.
Well, at least the community benefited from it, but it sure makes it awful hard to balance your books, especially when you're just kind of taking those first steps in creating your business.
Yes, that it definitely made it hard to pay bills when you're just giving it away. Absolutely.
And it's like any kind of farming, you're kind of betting on the future, because even in this process, which is 45-day cycle, which is a pretty short cycle in farming, but you still have to bet that, if you plant that seed today, 45 days from now, you have a market to sell it into. Otherwise, you're, essentially running a charity, and that's not what you're in this for. The other
right, correct.
I kind of wanted to touch on, I like that model because one of the things in my previous podcast I talked about was, kind of those smaller community-based farm operations. And one of the cost in, getting produce, or, in this case, lettuce or kale and some of the things that you're growing here, you get it shipped from the valleys of California. That cost, not only the actual cost for fuel and trucking and all that, but environmental costs and everything. And yours is so locally based, which is, fantastic. And do you see, the businesses you're working with and other members of the community? Because, to me, one of the big pieces for this, for you, is to educate everybody around you to a lot of those value added things that you're doing, not just producing a great, healthy, organic product, but some of these other environmental positive impacts you're having. Has that come up at all with what you're trying to do?
It hasn't come up, but we actually are in the process right now of going solar with LED grow lights. Trying to make our carbon footprint less.
You just keep getting better and better here.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you try to. As far as the community, you want to set the best example you can in any business, whether it's farming running the hotel or whatever. You want to get people to like what you're doing. As far as the community, the community has really taken a hold of our produce. Just about everybody uses it, buys it, whether it's at a restaurant or at the grocery stores. We've been pretty satisfied with the following we have.
I'm still curious what kind of got you, you did talk a little bit about how, interest had started about 10 years ago and then coming up a few years ago. A lot of operations like this seem to be, there's a bit of passion in doing this type of thing. Was this something along that line you had thought about because this is an area that you're interested in? Is this just seemed like a good business opportunity? What was that spark?
Well,
this is a leap.
It was really a good, it actually came up because my oldest son didn't really know what he was going to do. He didn't want to go to college. My other business is I own a dump truck business.
Okay.
Doesn't really want anything to do with driving dump trucks. So we're looking for something that would be hands-on where he can get out. He likes to talk to people, and he's kind of a social butterfly. So this is a business where you can go out and see different people every day. Different people stop here every day. As far as the business side of it, again, with Nelson and Pate, after I took that class and their consulting and running it through the whole business plan that they already have in place for you, besides getting your customers, it pretty much came out to be a no-brainer as far as what we were going to do.
Well, that sounds like some pretty excellent parenting there on your part, Dad. I mean, that is a really setting a good example, but also trying to find the strengths and really running with that, and obviously creating a great business that I think everyone's going to benefit from for sure. How have you tied this in? I asked a little bit about education side of it, but, kind of working with schools. I know that you sell some of the produce, I believe, to area school district as well. How are you tying that in, or plan to kind of tie in, more of the educational part of what you're doing in aquaponics?
Yeah, we do sell to a few of the local schools, and we've also had, before the COVID stuff hit, I don't remember how many classes have been on here, biology classes, FFAs. We had quite a few tours there before March. And at some point that'll continue.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get past this stuff hopefully sooner than later. And there's already people that have expressed interest in coming here and taking the tour and asking questions and seeing how it all works. Once you're able to actually do that without the chance of spreading the disease, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're all on hold for a lot of things until this till we get past or beyond COVID somehow. Right. You talked about how, with the support of the manufacturer and class and everything, things kind of clicked in place there fairly well. But what was kind of, maybe the hardest part of this whole process to this point?
Well, I think that, probably the hardest part was just getting it all put together. The financing went well, and then, because we built it, basically, Alex, my son, and I built the whole structure and everything ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously trying to save some money, and then how everything's put together when you do it yourself.
Right.
That's pretty much how that went, I guess.
When you got that first customer, was it something, you decided, these next 3 days we're going to go out and pound the pavement and try to get customers, or did you just kind of, take them one at a time as you saw what your production could be?
Yes, it's a learning game with because neither of us have any background in growing plants. Besides the little bit of schooling that I went to at Nelson and Pate, I also went down there and trained with them for a week right in their facility down there in Montello, Wisconsin. So it was one at a time. For being in a customer service business like this, you got to make sure you got enough product to keep the first guy supplied,
right?
The second guy supplied. You can't just go out and get everybody you want, because you got to make sure you got product to give the first few customers. Otherwise, you lose them, and usually if somebody leaves, they don't come back.
And it's all about building that reputation of being a reliable supplier as well.
Correct. Yep.
So tell us about the process and, the differing things that you're producing. And then I really, one of the favorite things, my wife loves to eat is tilapia. So we're definitely going to be buying some of that from you as well. But one of the things that, the process, I think, to let our listeners know, I think people have a vague idea of aquaponics, which is different than hydroponics. So I think, those are two not completely different, but they're definitely different things. But kind of talking about that whole enclosed system, how everything flows through, kind of from beginning to end there.
Well, it really, you got fish that provide your fertilizer. The waste is separated out from the good water. Then there's a little process in there with adding air and taking air away, from changing from nitrite, which is basically coming from the ammonia of the fish, back to nitrate. That's what your plants eat. In this system here, the water is gravity flowed from the fish through the filter systems all the way down through the plants and back, and then there's one pump that cleans basically the fresh or clean water back to the fish.
And for people to understand, the plants are in the water. I mean, they don't touch soil at all, correct?
Correct. This is a dirtless system. The only thing that touches the water actually is the roots. Every seed is planted into what they call a rock wool cube, and that grow cube, just the bottom of it actually touches the water, and then it absorbs the water and the nutrients up, which feeds your plants. So
as you're, going through and growing, and we're going to think of a day when, we don't all have to worry about being, 6 feet apart and everything else, of scaling this operation. Do you feel that there's a big enough market in there to scale 2 times, 5 times, 10 times? How do you envision this, say, 5 years down the road?
I think definitely at least another building set up just like this. I know there's market here that hasn't been touched just say from Rice Lake to Eau Claire. I'm kind of almost in the middle,
mm-hmm.
and there really isn't anybody else doing. There's a couple hydroponic farms, which those guys, as far as I know, don't have plans on expanding, which I'm not sure why you wouldn't if the market's there. I think people nowadays, after all this stuff, are buying way more local, whether it's vegetables or pork or beef or chickens, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Seen that kind of a huge spike, which I think will continue in the future.
And I think it has to. I mean, again, from the sustainability point of it, with trying to have as much of what you're eating, knowing where it's from is a huge benefit, and people kind of look at prices and things. You can walk into, a Walmart or into, some larger chain grocery stores and buy, like I said, produce from Mexico or California. And it's nice to have something fresh like that in February or March, but you can do that right there in that operation, because it's a year round growing operation, which I think is one of the neat things about what you're doing. and why it would lend itself to be more scalable, because if you can show where that's grown, and then that whole aspect of educating students in school and then even having tours for the general public, and I don't know if you do that or not, but I've seen that in some other operations, where getting them to understand how it's grown and the benefits of that. I mean, you're just creating more and more customers and getting people that ask for, hey, can we get that green leaf lettuce or green leaf kale as well?
Yeah. And that, as far as the tours and the education part, if we got time when somebody's here, we give them a tour.
So how much tilapia do you produce in this process?
Well, we have 6 tanks. So we have 2 nursery tanks where the little fish are, and we have 4 bigger tanks. They're here about 9 months, and we'll do about every 6 weeks. We take a batch. A batch is ready to come out at about roughly 2 pounds a piece.
Okay.
And there's roughly 250 fish in there, so you got about 500. You got, there's roughly probably 2,300 pounds of fish here all the time.
So
as far as the quantity number, they're about 1,500. Okay.
So does that, is tilapia just one of those like marginal, okay, you sell them when they get to adulthood, but on your total sales, they'd be like, 2% or 10%. I mean, is it just kind of like I said, that marginal piece of the business?
Yeah, it really, it's basically the price of the fish and the feed that you feed them to get to be about 2 pounds. That's just your fertilizer.
Okay.
And yes, it's a very marginal part of the overall revenue stream of this business.
And this part I don't have any background on, but are you then you buy the fry to raise? You're able to raise your own there. How does that process work?
We buy fry. They're about 0.75 gram or 3/4 of an inch long when they get here from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
They come shipped overnight.
Okay. So as you're going through this process of growing these different products, are you planning to do more? Because I think you have 8 or so differing, I'll say leafy products that you grow. If you could just let us know all the different things that you do grow currently, and then if there are new things you plan to.
We're growing 2 varieties of lettuce, a romaine and a leaf. And then we have Swiss chard, red and green kale, and basil is our primary products that we're raising now and will continue to raise. In the future, if there was another building put up, it may be such a thing where that goes to tomatoes and cucumbers. I don't know.
So are you limited to products that don't have to be pollinated? What are the kind of the constraints on this type of farming?
Yeah, usually you do either pollinated or non-pollinated plants all in one building.
Okay.
So yes, in this building I have here, it's all non-pollinated. You could bring in, a bumblebee hive if you wanted to start doing some tomatoes or something like that, but there's really not, the way they have this building set up, there's not room to do anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was curious. Well, I'm a honeybee guy myself, so I've got 3 hives. The farm I grew up on, we had a ton of them as well. So I was just kind of curious how that works. I've seen aquaponics operations where they're plants that do need to be pollinated, but how they go about that, and a bumblebee hive would be I would think would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure that's about probably 95% of them use bumblebees because they're not quite as aggressive.
Yes.
To human.
Yes. And their population is fairly small. I mean, one of my honeybee hives can have, 30,000 bees in it. So.
Right.
So if you were, you had somebody come in and say, I want to duplicate this, up in Rhineland or where have you, what would you tell them?
Well, I would offer any support I can give them. I mean, there's room for plenty of people to start an adventure like this. As long as they're not putting on the 40 next to me, I'm good with helping anybody out. You know.
Hey, that's a good, honest answer.
I mean, there's no. I mean, I've had lots of even hydroponic people that I've met through this whole loop. Call them and ask them a question. They're like, "Yeah, here's what I do." You know, it's or come to my place in Baldwin or wherever, and I'll show you what we do and how we do it. I think as long as people are staying relative distance away and not stepping on each other's toes, there's no reason not to share information and work with people.
And it seems to be, and I haven't, looked at this extensively. I've talked to a few different people over the years who've been involved with it, but it seems like it's a very helpful, positive community where, I really wouldn't expect somebody to want to set up shop on the 40 next to you. It just seems to be a very respectful group of people.
I think I mean, you're talking about people that want to make their communities better. So I think for the most part, they're all good people.
Is the size of your operation now, assuming that we were in a non-COVID kind of time, is that the size of an operation that could support a family, or would it need to be another size or two bigger? Because, basically any new business, I would tell people when I would consult with them, you're looking at least 2 years before you're going to really be able to draw any money for yourself. Is that kind of where you're at with this?
Absolutely. I guess looking back, maybe because they sell I bought a small commercial system from them, and they also obviously sell a large commercial system. But if you just want to get your feet wet, you can, put up another building. It's not a huge deal anymore, but because you know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If a guy maybe in a bigger area, like say Eau Claire, I wouldn't hesitate to go with a large commercial system right off the bat.
So, so at that point, you think, this is something that somebody could do that would be able to support their family, couple acre plot with that type of a system. Okay. Because I think that's one of the things people need to understand too, is that depending on the size, it either goes from a bigger level hobby, marginal kind of thing to, you put your time and effort into this. It's a small business like anything else.
Absolutely. You can make money doing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it probably.
No matter how much you love your son, you still got to make some money.
Look at how to make some money. Absolutely.
Yes. It's funny. People want their bills paid, right?
Right. Yep. The bank's looking for their check every month.
Oh, definitely. And they will always collect. Okay. What would be, kind of your, top couple things, warnings for people going into this? Sometimes people look at this and like, okay, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to start this. What would be some words of warning, I guess?
If you've never been a farmer, this is a 7-day-a-week deal. You got live animals you got to deal with. There's something new every day. Other than that, if you like to work hard and get out of bed in the morning, it's really a comfortable way that you can, as far as temperature and climate setting. You're in a greenhouse every day that you can have your shorts on if you want all year round, and you can make money doing it.
Does it help to be somebody who's a bit handy?
That does help. If you're a little bit mechanically inclined and, a little bit about sewer, water, electrical, there's, once it's set up, it's should be self-sustaining, the electrical part of it, which anybody that builds a commercial building, you got to have that certified anyways. But yeah, like I said, if you build it yourself, you know exactly how things got put together and how they're supposed to run. And, there's sensors in this building that if there's low water pressure, low water temperature, or the air quits running, it calls my phone or my kid's phone, and somebody's got to come here no matter what time of the day it is and figure out what's going on and try to get things back to normal so you don't kill your fish.
How many hours a day are you there working on that actual process? And then how many hours, selling? I believe you said that you're open till your actual to sell or what have you from 8 till noon, I think.
Yeah, we're open 8 to noon Monday through Saturday. There's always one of us here. It's really probably about a 50-hour work week.
Okay.
Between doing all the chores and delivering.
Then would you say you are able to scale and you go double the size? Is that amount of, total, think capacity planning? If you have, 2 people, you have 100 hours, so 2 people are doing 50. Does it add an extra, 50 hour? I mean, are there certain things that would overlap so you're not, basically having another 100 hours of work capacity needed when you double the size because some things would cross over? Or how does that work?
Well, yeah, I think if you double the size, I think where you're going to get the more hours is your deliveries. Okay. Because now rather than delivering, just say 40 totes of lettuce a week, you're going to want to be delivering 80. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where you're going to eat up more of your time. The actual feed, harvest, doing the chores for another building isn't going to eat up that more time because you're already here.
Are any of the products or produce that you're growing now, are there any local competitors to that, or are these all products that are generally shipped into your market?
Well, there is a couple of hydroponic places close enough to, but as far as my customers, I don't have any competition as far as them trying to steal them away. Customers I got, I think, are happy with the product and service that we're given, and as far as I know, the other local guys that are around never even approached the customers I have. So, and I think they're busy enough to where they're not worried about what I'm doing either.
So when you walked into, and just for my audience, Hope and Anchor, which is a local coffee shop in Chetek, or KJ's, which is a local grocery chain with a number of stores, are either one of those easier to go into versus the other? Are they looking for differing things from you?
Well, that's the retail versus wholesale side of what the way they're selling things. Like you got special packages for the grocery stores where the restaurants all just take bulk totes. So it is a little bit different there as far as the delivery of product from us.
But is one more open to the idea of buying from your operation, or that just didn't matter?
That really didn't matter. Like I said, the community really embraced the process of us doing what we're doing. So it was really, some of the people I didn't have to even go see. They just called me and said, "Hey, start bringing this stuff." So.
Well, that's a nice business plan right there.
Right.
Well, and because the reason I ask is when I had done a farming episode on my podcast, I wanted to really get across to people that, doing, sustainable or smaller community farming it has nothing to do with politics. And obviously in that area, it's more of a ruby red political kind of area versus, people think, something like this would only happen maybe like in a Madison, Wisconsin area, which is quite a bit more liberal. And that has nothing to do with it. I grew up in farming family, and, growing good, healthy food isn't a political thing. It's just a good thing to do.
Right. Yeah. I don't think there's any politics at all that I've seen, I guess.
Yeah. And I just really wanted to stress that point that, wherever you're at, this is just a great thing to do. And, most everybody wants to know where their food is coming from. And especially when you're, more of a farming community, people are used to dealing with things like that as well. So tell us what your website is and kind of, again, how people can buy your product and the products that you sell and any other good PR kind of commercial plugs you'd like to give us here, because what you're doing is really tremendous.
Yeah, the website is green-leaffarms.com. As far as places to buy, in the Chetek, Bloomer area, Cornell, the KJ's grocery stores. If you go on the website, there's a list of all the other restaurants, convenience stores where I sell my products.
Have you ever thought of doing any kind of an online operation, or just the cost of that and the logistics of that, or, maybe not worth it?
Well, it's really not. It's really not what our goal is. Our goal is just to stay close to home and keep all our local customers happy. You could probably do some online overnight packaging, but now you're talking, some big money to buy that head of lettuce, which I'm not too sure many people would want to pay.
It's a good product, but it's it's a good, healthy head of lettuce for your local community, which I think is one of the great goals of an operation like yours, is to be, supporting that community, getting them good product within that community, and making that as healthy and as sustainable of a product as well. And that's kind of why I really like to stress these types of operations, because it does help that overall community grow and get good food into their bodies. And just about every study shows, especially in schools, that if you have that fresh produce in their menus, not only are those kids more alert and healthier, but they get better test scores as well. I mean, academically, they achieve so much more. So it's why an operation like yours, I think people really need to embrace and try to replicate throughout the country. All right. Well, thank you so much, Clayton, for taking time to join us today. And we will definitely be in there. I can't wait to come in and get some good, fresh tilapia, especially, and some good greens there. So thank you again for taking your time today.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for joining us today. Help us spread the word by telling your friends, family, and heck, even your frenemies that they can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Luminary, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio. Pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you're going to find Wimmers Wilderness. To learn more about us, go to wimmerswilderness.org. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wimmers Wilderness.